Hello, everyone. I hope you all are well. We will be starting the webinar series shortly. We're just waiting for some of the audience. So probably in 1 or 2 minutes, we'll begin our webinar. All right. Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me? If yes, please press 1 to show that you all can hear me. How are you, everyone? Please press 1 in the comment section. Great. So that means you all can hear me. All right. My name is Wallace, course counselor, and I'm the moderator for today's webinar. I hope you all are well. Can you indicate in the comment section below where are you from? From Kuching? Any one of you from KL or any parts of Malaysia or even outside of Malaysia? Please comment where are you from, so we know who are the audience and where are they from. Right, I see Kuching from Mr. Hillary. Kuching. All right. Hi, Ronaldo. Hi, Siti Kartina. Dexter, Kartini. Hi, everyone. Okay, so once again, welcome to today's webinar. It's a Saturday, so I want you all to sit back, relax, and enjoy the session. Hi, Sundra. Hi, how are you? Hi, Mary. Hi, Perry. Hi, everyone. Okay, so now a bit of introduction before we start the session. So what is this webinar all about? Okay, so today's topic will be how to not argue like an idiot. Okay, in this seminar, Mr. Samuel will be presenting techniques to improve a person's ability to present a persuasive argument, which includes techniques such as using ethos, pathos, and logos, and correcting fallacies. The aim in today's webinar is actually to show how legally trained persons, such as lawyers, would argue a particular topic and communicate effectively in our daily conversation. A bit about our speaker for today is Mr. Samuel. Mr. Samuel is a law lecturer at SEGiCollege, Sarawak. Mr. Samuel teaches criminal law, contract law, and family law. He also coaches the SEGi Sarawak debate team and chess team. He is a sitting member of Youth Parliament of Malaysia, serving the Socioeconomic Committee, and is the committee member for Sarawak Youth Parliament Disciplinary Board. Okay, so that is the profile of our speaker for today. Let me bring our speaker live. Mr. Samuel, can you hear me, Mr. Samuel?
Hello, Wallace. Can you hear me?
How are you?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Actually, you actually have to ask that every time you have a conversation online. Can you actually hear me? That's apparently the go-to thing you have to do first. So how's everyone? Thank you for having me, Wallace.
You're welcome.
A wonderful introduction.
I think the audience is waiting for your presentation. Over to you, Mr. Samuel.
Okay, great, Wallace. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that introduction that you gave me. Wonderful introduction. All right. So why are we here today? Basically, how to not argue like an idiot, isn't it? All right. So how do I better illustrate this conversation, right? How do I illustrate this? Well, why is the webinar not called How to Win Every Single Argument? Why not? Why not make that? Because you can't win every single argument. It's impossible, right? Unless you're a psychopath, in which a situation, I guess you can win every single argument, right? But that's not why we are here. We are here to make sure that you're a competent arguer, not to win every single argument. All right. So, like most people, I have lost arguments before. Yes. So what happened in such a situation is that I would have an argument with a colleague. Okay, I remember one situation very, very well, in which I was competent in that argument, but I know my style, but I wasn't good enough, meaning that my style was off. And what happened was I had the argument, I lost the argument, I knew I lost that argument because you have a feeling when you actually lost an argument. And I went home, had my dinner, and then took a bath, right? And then in the bath, because how relaxed you are in a bath, I started thinking of all the things I could have said better, right? All these new great ideas that have been useful 2 hours ago suddenly came up to me. And that's basically very frustrating. So basically, this is to ensure that you have less of those days. Obviously, you will still have those days. You can't win every single argument. Again, you have to remember that, right? So basically, why are we here? But before we even speak about that, let me just indicate this thing, right? So you saw from my portfolio, I'm a debating coach. I used to debate when I was younger. I'm still young, but I used to debate when I'm younger too, all right? So an argument here I would present is not a debate. A debate and an argument is two different things, right? Debate can be an argument, but an argument is more encompassing. So what does that mean? So what does it mean that a debate and an argument is different, right? What does it mean that an argument is not a debate? All right, but let's see the definition for this one first before we even answer that question. All right, what is a debate? A debate or debating is a formal method of interactive and representational argument. Okay, normally in debate, you will have the government side and you have the opposition side. And obviously in a public debate, it will be a bit for or against, right? You are not convincing the opposition. The other team standing on the other side, doesn't matter if they get convinced. It doesn't matter. Because who you're trying to convince is either the judge of the debate or you're trying to convince the public, right? Especially if it's a public debate. That situation, you are trying to convince the public. But in an argument that we're talking about here today, all right, an argument is an attempt to persuade someone or something. Okay, it shouldn't be something. You don't want to persuade your cat, all right? By giving reasons or evidence, or maybe you want to persuade your cat. Who knows? Up to you. Or evidence for accepting a particular conclusion. The general structure of an argument in a natural language is that the premise, typically the form of proposition, statements or sentences in support of a claim, the conclusion. Okay, a lot of fancy words. What do they actually mean? All right. Basically, in argument, you're proposing something, and this is what I'm talking about. This is what you normally do on day-to-day basis. What I'm trying to present here today is arguments that you have on a daily basis. For example, okay, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back is the best of the Star Wars movie. That's the proposition, right? And your argument is that it's the best, okay? And then you have an argument with your friend because your friend thinks that the Return of the Jedi is the best Star Wars movie, right? Or any kind of movie, insert one, okay, there. So this is the normal day-to-day conversations that you would have with people. Normally, on everyday basis, at least for me, I don't have debates about should we clean water, right? Or should we have renewable energy. Normally, those day-to-day discussions, I would say, is not like that. So basically speaking, we want to be better or competent in our attempt to have a good discussion. All right, so I'm going to show you a quote here by Mr. Karl Popper. Karl Popper's name may sound funny, but he's a very intelligent man. All right, what he states here, the aim of an argument or a discussion should not be victory, but progress. All right, so this is what I mean that you can't win every debate because an argument is an exchange of ideas. an exchange of ideas, and it's very important that you also learn something when you are having an argument, right? Do not always think you're right, because that's the surest way to not have friends. So again, you do not want to debate everyone. I have a very talented friend, a lawyer, and he likes to debate all the time about everything, including the weather, which is, no one likes it except me. But, I have weird friends. Okay, anyhow, we'll continue on. What's the point of this webinar? Okay, I already told you a bit about it. Okay, is to improve your method of argument. Like anything in life, there's certain art to arguments. Obviously, everyone can ride a bicycle, but not everyone can do the Tour de France. All right, and everyone can jump. However, not everyone can jump like gymnastics. Okay. When you see this kind of performance, like Lee Chong Wei in the Olympics, or when you see Farah Ann in her, her gymnastics, it seems as if it's easy. All right, but it's because they have mastered the art, right? It's because they have mastered the art of this particular form. And arguments are the same; they are an art form, right? There's a skill to it. There's a practice to your arguments, and that is what we will be basically trying to dissect here today. It also allows you to articulate the arguments better. Remember that story when I told you about when I had the argument against a colleague and my colleague won, but my colleague, I believe, won more on style than substance. All right, the reason is a lot of people actually know a lot, however, they can't articulate it well. Right? Articulate meaning here is how do you present your argument in a way that is convincing. All right, in this situation, we want to learn how to do that. A lot of my law students, surprisingly so, they're very good at articulating the ideas, okay, especially if they're second year or third year, right? Then they've already mastered it, okay? Sometimes they have an argument with me, which is even more fantastic because I, of course, recommend that, right? And so basically, when someone is a legally trained person, their ability to articulate that argument is better. Now, you can say, oh, yeah, right, I've seen a lawyer who wasn't very good in articulating the argument, all right? However, due to their training, normally even an average legally trained person could actually, be quite competent against an average person, all right? So if you compare the two, you have someone who is trained and someone who's not, it would often lead to one situation or the other where the person who's legally trained most of the time would be able to articulate better, right? So the idea here is to ensure that you can actually articulate your ideas as well as they should, because your ideas are valuable, right? I know all of you are very smart people. By just coming to this webinar today, you already shown that. You've shown you are here to improve yourself, which is fantastic, and it shows that you are willing to engage some new ideas. Okay, continuing on. And here, some of you are probably here for this reason. I know, especially some of the younger ones. They want to know how to counter tricks and fallacies. Okay, tricks and fallacies, or in a more dishonest manner, how to learn those tricks. Okay, so I don't recommend, of course, you to use tricks when you're actually having an argument. But however, I'm just dispensing knowledge. However you want to use that knowledge is up to you. Right? Okay, and also to counter it from the person you are, or the opposition, basically speaking. Okay, so we'll be learning a bit about that, and I will be talking about that using some examples later on. Okay, all right, let's continue on. Knowledge is competence. So this is the first thing I want to state out loud. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is competence. Because the more knowledgeable you are, the competent you are. All right. The more you know, the easier it gets. Knowledge, like money, makes things a bit easier. All right. One of the best indicators of success, in psychological school, is the person's IQ. The more higher your IQ, the more likely you are to be successful. This is been proven numerous times, right? So obviously, when you have more knowledge, it's more easier for you to formulate your arguments, right? So disappeal, how does this work? Okay, disappeal involves convincing your audience that you are intelligent and can be trusted. Okay, earlier in this webinar, Mr. Wallace, the dashing Mr. Wallace, showed you my portfolio. Okay, now what does this mean actually? What is he's trying to achieve? He's trying to tell you, look, this person knows what he's talking about. Basically, that's what it is. All right. this person knows what they're talking about, you should listen to them. And in most of the things, when you have an argument, you are trying to establish this, I am an expert, basically speaking. Okay. However, you can't just outright tell people this. Okay, writers cannot simply say to the audience, I can be trusted because I'm smart and a good person. First of all, if someone actually said this to me, I can be trusted because I'm smart and a good person, I think that person is trying to do something to me. Okay, are you trying to con me? What are you doing? All right, so in such a situation, you cannot do that. So it's not that easy, because when you have an argument, there's no Mr. Wallace to come out from nowhere, or this person has a PhD on this. It doesn't work that way. In real life, that's not how it works, right? People don't just give your info out and people will recognize this. When you have a dinner or cocktail party, obviously when you have an argument, you have to present it in a different manner. Now, obviously, if you're being invited to an event, they will actually tell you what is your credentials, but in day-to-day life, most of the time, you don't get a chance to actually tell people how capable you are. So this appeals perhaps the most difficult to establish, the most difficult, because to actually have expertise requires you to be an expert. All right, it requires you to go to college, requires you to get a degree, requires you to get a mastery, PhDs. None of these are easy nor simple or cheap, I would dare say. All right, and you have to prove yourself by demonstrating you understand what you're arguing. So this is so easily dismissed. All right, have you ever seen? Okay, I like to do something. I like to watch people who present a case about flat Earth. Okay, I think flat Earth is ridiculous, but some people believe it. Okay, not some people, thousands of people believe it. So I was watching a video of the flat Earth person, and he was a very capable speaker. All right, his style was quite nice, and he had like 300,000 people watching that video, and the like ratio was higher than the dislike ratio. So you can see that where there is substance against style, oftentimes substance can actually lose to style. Obviously, if you have both, you're almost unstoppable, right? But when you have only substance, which is knowledge, right, you could still lose. But again, knowledge makes your argument easier, right? Obviously, if you know more. Okay, I'm going to show you an example of Mr. Jack Ma and Mr. Elon Musk. Jack Ma, now I may be saying some things about Mr. Jack Ma, and I have to reiterate here. I believe Mr. Jack Ma is a very intelligent person. He's a very smart individual. However, what you realize if you actually watch this into YouTube, you realize that Jack Ma is talking about something that he is not an expert on, and he's dealing with someone who is literally a genius, than Elon Musk. All right, so you have two people, two persons, both intelligent, but one is more of an expert and the other is less of an expert. And this conversation was about AI, all right, which is Musk is technically an expert, all right. But again, I want to reiterate that Jack Ma is a very intelligent person. However, he was out of his depth in this situation. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? Jack Ma in that interview had such a problem. So if you watch the interview, you'll get a chance to actually see what actually happens here. But I cannot show you that interview because it's copyright strike. Yeah, don't want to do that. All right. So when you know more, okay. What did I just say something on? All right. When you know more, you will have confidence. And in that discussion, Jack Ma started confidently because he was very optimistic about AI. And as the interview went on, Jack Ma's confidence evaporated slowly and slowly as he knows less and less. All right, and his confidence level got lesser. He started shaking around, started moving around uncomfortably on his chair. All right, and it's quite obvious that what he wants to tell Elon Musk is like, hey man, can I get out of here? That'll be great. Yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. All right. So as the conversation continued, it was becoming quite obvious that Jack Ma was becoming less uneasy as the time goes on. All right, and because Elon Musk is an expert in AI, he obviously is the founder of Tesla and SpaceX, and also invests in DeepMind, Google AI. He is actually someone who is more equipped than most when it comes to the knowledge of AI. I also believe he created a Radiant AI, which is fantastic. So he was able to present his arguments in a complex manner. And not only that he was able to present his argument in just complex manner, he was able to break it down, the complexity. Here's the thing when you have knowledge, and I see this problem a lot with intellectuals. is that you are able to present the argument in a complex manner, but you don't know how to break it down. All right, which is a big problem. So lecturers, our job is to break it down to students who never heard it before, right? So a bit of advantage there when we're trying to break it down. So Mas was trying to tell Jack Ma that you shouldn't be too optimistic, because Ma was talking about how AI is beneficial, which Mas also agrees with. But Mas says you should be more pessimistic, Mr. Ma, all right? Because you are investing in tech, obviously, right? So as the conversation went on and Mas was able to discuss technical things about AI, Ma started losing the conversation or losing the argument, because it was becoming quite obvious that he did not know. Now, Jack Ma did not admit that he did not know, because he had an audience there. Okay? So when you have an audience, normally people will not admit that they lost the argument. All right? And it also allows you to be aware of counterpoints, right? Counterpoints is very important. Okay, the worst way to argue is only to think you're right. So you saw that I'm also a trainer of the chess team. Why did I brought that in? Because in chess, you should not only know your moves, but also your opponent's moves. So in an argument, it's also the same thing. If you are aware of what your opponent's best arguments are, you can actually counter it pretty easily, right? Because you have researched how the arguments are weak. Now, most people will have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 points that they already know about, right? However, most people who are not very competent in arguing, they do not know counterpoints, because they have been living in an echo chamber, all right, in which everyone agrees, which is the death of ideas, I would say. Do not live in an echo chamber. Do talk to people who disagree with you as much as you can, even if it frustrates you, like Pathos. All right. So I suggest you do that. And if you are more knowledgeable, you would know a counterpoint. Okay, for example, let's say the argument is about reopening the economy after COVID-19. Should we reopen it or should we not reopen it? I actually want to discuss that later on. But let's say the counterpoints for that, I'm aware, I'm actually a proposition to reopening the economy. I'm aware the counterpoint is a third wave or a second wave, depending who you ask, and the dangers of an infection rate rising. Okay, so we'll discuss that in a bit more turn later on. But there is the counterpoint to reopening the economy. So you're aware of both. You should listen to both sides, I would say, right? So please try, if you have an argument, know that the person will argue one way or the other, and you should be aware of that counterpoint. All right, it also allows you to do intellectual gymnastics. This is one of my favorite words because it makes me sound very intelligent. So I like to tell that word to my students, and they're like, "What is that?" Intellectual gymnastics. Okay, intellectual gymnastics, just like actual gymnastics, is when you make something more complex than it should. All right, but you break it down and make it look easy. So what intellectual gymnastics means here? Using the same argument, reopening the economy, not reopening the economy. If you don't reopen the economy or you reopen it too late, it would actually lead, if you know intellectual gymnastics, to unemployment, right? Obviously unemployment. But if you have a grasp of intellectual gymnastics, this is not the only thing. Unemployment leads to people without jobs, which leads to people being unhappy, which leads to depression, which leads to suicide, which leads to death rates actually being higher than the virus itself. Okay, so this is what we call intellectual gymnastics. It's when you're able to link things together. Okay, for example, let's say you are talking about Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars. You maybe your intellectual gymnastics that you say Empire Strikes Back is a lot like other movies which are very good, like Mad Max or something like that. They have a hero's journey, they have a struggle, they have a villain that is very charismatic, and things of that nature, or like The Dark Knight, for example. So that's you link it to other movies who people also consider to be great movies. So they share a DNA, in other words. So this is what I mean by intellectual gymnastics. You're able to break down or link them to several situations, right? So that people, obviously, people commit suicide, that people will lead to depression of family members, who also can lead to more death. So, okay, but that can also be a slippery slope argument, which I would discuss later on. Okay, so the next thing you need to present to the people is that you're not there to fight. All right. The best way not to convince someone is to tell them you are their enemy. All right. If you tell them I'm here to fight you, most likely they will not be convinced by you. because people are very tribal, right? So if you're presenting yourself as someone who opposes their view stringently, then you most likely will not be able to persuade them. So normally with friends, I would try my best not to actually tell them I actually oppose the argument. Instead, I'm trying to say that I agree with it. However, I am breaking it in a way that is actually against the arguments, and then they realize that. So, but it's very important for you to delay that confrontation. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, I already explained it in a bit just now. It's very important you present yourself as non-confrontational. The surest way to actually not get someone to be convinced is to be immediately confrontational. So if you enter an argument and you're like, hey, let's go for it, then you're just staring it down, your eyes, you're fidgeting and looking around, you're rolling your eyes. People tend to do this sometimes unconsciously, all right? And people pick up on this. Human beings are very, very capable of picking up on body language. They're very capable of doing that, which is why the next part is actually kind of important, body posture. I was taking a particular person to meet someone very important recently, and he wasn't sitting up straight. And I told him, you need to convince this person, this very important person, that you are worth his time. You need to sit up straight. So I adjusted his body posture and told him, you need to be a valuable human being. Okay, so body posture is very important. But in an argument, however, is even more important. You need to look relaxed. You need to come in as if you are not there to fight. Okay, sit down, be comfortable, but don't sit down, don't stand. Right? Try to sit down in a comfortable manner. Be as less confrontational as you can be, and be a relaxed person. Because if you actually pretend, right? Because we are trying to pretend that we're relaxed. Obviously, arguments are not relaxed situations. When you sit down, you need to prepare yourself in a calm manner. Okay, when you emulate it, your mind tells you you are calm, which is great, right? And this allows you to present your arguments even more convincing manner, because sometimes, again, style over substance. You must have opening words. So one of the person I respect greatly in life is my grandfather. And my grandfather has this remarkable ability in which we disagree with people, would often compliment them first, right? So what he would do is that, I know you have been giving this much thought, and I believe you're coming from a good place. Or I know you're giving this much thought, and I believe your arguments, I see your point. Here's the statement, I see your point, or I understand what you're trying to say. Okay, so basically what does this mean? Basically, you're telling that person, I know you are very intelligent, I know you're very smart, and if you lose this argument, that's okay. And it's okay to change your mind, because you will still be a smart person, right? My grandfather does this well, that even some people who don't like him often says that he's respectful, which I try to emulate as much as I can. He's a very good man, and I hope he's watching this, to which I wish to tell him that he's perhaps one of the best in terms of disability. So when I was younger, my grandfather would train me how to argue. So one of the reasons why I argue quite constantly is my grandfather's trying to train me. So he would tell me, Samuel, if you want to convince someone, you start by telling them they are smart. You see, I understand your point. I see your point. I do understand it. It does make sense. However, all right, there's always the however. In the end, which you disagree. So I think that's well-versed, right? Well-versed, in which you want to make that person seem as if, even if he loses this argument, he is not humiliated, or she is not humiliated, right? So it's very important, because people often disagree and they do not want to change their mind, because they feel that if they change their mind, they'll look like an idiot, right? So that's what they don't want to do. This is why I say arguments are not debates. Because debates can lead to people being humiliated, right? So I'm just showing you an example of body posture here with Mr. Jordan Peterson. So obviously, if you don't agree with his views, that's fine, but he has very good body posture. So oftentimes he would sit down in a very relaxed manner. Okay, Mr. Jordan is to the right? So, and you have the interview to the left. You can see the interview is a bit, a bit tense, as his feet seems as if he's trying to kick Jordan. right? But Jordan is taking a very relaxed pose, and this allows him to articulate his arguments in a very convincing manner, at least to people who view the argument, right? So maybe he is not able to convince the interviewer, but perhaps he can also convince other people, because sometimes Jordan is on a debate instead of an argument, a public figure. Okay, so when you're talking, it's very important to have palms open. So you're telling me right now, you think to yourself, oh, Mr. Samuel, I know this. People have told me about palm hands. So okay, it's not something new. People have known this for forever, right? But what do you mean by this? I know this already. But do you know why? Now, humanity carries with it certain hereditary traits, right? So, for example, I want you to observe this among your friends. If you have a friend that has his hands palm closed, especially if they're a stranger, okay, their hands are closed, okay, on the table or something like that, okay, palm closed. I want you to observe this in your real life. I want you to observe this when someone have their palm closed or they're talking in palm manner, right? So closed palm, like something like this, or something like this, or something like this, right? And you will see people around him, who are paying attention to what they're talking about, start going a bit back. Okay, the body arch backwards, and their neck start to crane like this. Okay, or they start shaking their head like this. So this is a common human nature. You almost is instinctive because of your, in the past, cavemen were fighting each other, right? So closed palm is actually telling that person, I'm hiding something from you. I'm hiding something for you. And your body instinctively tells, what is this person hiding from me? What is he hiding from me? He's hiding a weapon from me. All right. And when your body instinctively, okay, subconsciously tells you this person is dangerous, don't trust him, then it's quite hard to convince that person, because their brain has already sent an odd message telling that person not to trust what this person says, because his hands is closed. He might have a weapon, or he's hiding something from you, right? Or she's hiding something from you. So this is pretty difficult. And what you want to do is, when you're having a conversation with someone, is to keep your hands open, okay, or seeable from their point of view. And that's very important in a sense, okay? So this is an example of opening words. It's a bad example, actually, but it is an example of the first part is good, okay? That's a valid point, okay? That's actually a good opening word when you're having an argument with a person, okay? That's a valid point. I see your point why the Return of the Jedi is actually a good movie. I understand. However, I disagree on it being the best movie among Star Wars, mainly because it's a little bit easily predictable, something like that, right? So the other part, of course, but screw you, I'm Spider-Man, that's obviously you shouldn't. Okay, because you're not Spider-Man. If you are, maybe it's a valid point, who knows? Okay, so I saw Spider-Man in one of the podcasts. Okay, here's an example of someone who actually does this great, which is Trevor Noah. All right, whenever you agree with Trevor or not, that's up to you, okay? But I just want to talk about his ability to actually discuss in terms of body posture. So you see Noah here, okay, first of all, Noah's a very dashing individual, okay? But he looks a good-looking man, what do you want me to say, right? But he's also very good in terms that he has the ability to relax when he's having a conversation with his Tommy Lauren. Okay, so Noah is a liberal, okay, or social liberal, and Tommy is a conservative. And Noah invited Tommy into his show. Now, this is very easy that Noah can actually, Trevor could actually be very, very aggressive with Tommy. Obviously, that is possible since it is his show. However, if you watch the interview with the two of them, you realize that for most of the time, Trevor tries his best not to be aggressive with Tommy. At least, there obviously sometimes he slips in because of all humans under intensity. So you start in the interview, you realize that Tommy Lauren started being very aggressive at the start, where she used a very loud voice. All right, where she's like, yeah, and then she had a very high pitched voice. And what happened was, here's a good tactic. If a person is raising their voice, I want to teach you this tactic, is to slow down your voice. For someone's like, I don't care. Listen. listen. Okay, slow down your voice. Listen, I understand. I understand you're upset. I understand you're upset. No, I don't care. Listen, okay, I understand you're upset. Get it, but you need to listen to me. Something like that. People often employ this when they're having a conversation. The worst way for you is to actually match the loud voice. That's not going to work out. You probably will not be friends anymore, right? So as the interview went on, Miss Tommy realized that Trevor is being respectful, and she also employs a new tactic, meaning her own body posture also changes, but she still have a closed palm, as you realize there, because Tommy is trying to assure herself, since the audience is against her, right? So that closed palm is actually her trying to comfort herself. So you need to realize that you have an open palm for Mr. Trevor as he tries to discuss, and you realize there's numerous interviews of Trevor out there, and he's a fantastic person when it comes to body posture. Him and Peterson, I would say, have a body posture when they're having an argument, especially with someone who is against them or arguing against them. All right. So I know that the description there talk about ethos and pathos. All right. I'm aware of that. It's not that I forgot about it and I did not include it in my slides. No, I'm aware of it. All right. But I decided when I had a conversation just 3 days ago with one of my students, and we were talking about how to make a presentable argument legally. All right. And the two of us discussed a lot of things. And I realized that ethos and pathos is too simple and obviously are not legal arguments. All right. So, okay, continuing on, what did the two of us discuss? So I told my student first, number one, is that you need to state your argument first. That's how you start a legal essay or a legal argument, right? So you start by stating your argument, either that A is guilty or A is not guilty, or A doesn't have the intention or the motive to kill that person, thus he is not guilty, or he cannot be fully blamed for it, something like that. So you state your argument first, and then you must always have an authority or evidence. Okay, then discuss the reasons why does he not have the motive. Okay, maybe A, or let's call him Andrian. Okay, if your name is Andrian, I'm sorry, I don't mean you, I mean some other Andrian, right? So in this situation, you tell that Andrian did not have the intention to kill his girlfriend or something like that, because what happened was Andrian mistakenly thought she was a deer inside the forest, so he shot her, and thus she should not be basically should not be found guilty of murder, maybe manslaughter, but not definitely not murder, right? Or maybe not definitely, but all right. And then you want to talk about the other arguments against it, okay, against your own argument. This is what I mean. So when you're having an argument, it's very important to listen. Okay, people have no patience to listen. I realize, no patience. They're always joking around, trying to wait for that person's mouth to close. All right. I have a weird conversation with some of my family members on dinner parties, okay, relatives, and I'm pretty sure they are just waiting for someone's mouth to close so that they can begin the argument. All right. So please have the patience to actually listen, because the more you listen, the more you are able to dissect a person's argument. Right. So it sounds like I'm a serial killer trying to dissect. Sorry about that, but that's how I speak. Okay, so listen to a counter argument. For example, in an essay, you need to present a case for and against. Okay, what is the case for? What is the case against? Okay, you already presented the case for. Now you need to consider what the case against is. For example, if you are a pro defense, then you need to consider what the prosecution will say and counter that statement, right? For example, let's use an example of reopening the economy. Again, okay, using that example. Sorry, I'm in the Socioeconomic committee, so that is something I talk about quite often. Okay, reopening the economy. Okay, so you have to listen to the counter arguments. It's very important to do that, or postulate them yourself. Okay, be aware of it and then even say it. Sometimes, if you're arguing with someone who is not competent, they would not know how to even postulate their disagreement. They just disagree. I once heard someone said, "Ya si suka sebab ya memang si suka, si ada sebab," right? So that was a funny discussion But in actual truth, everyone has a reason. So you need to consider those reasons. What are those reasons, right? For example, those who argue for not reopening the economy too soon, they will tell you about a second wave in Japan often, right? So, however, you also need to be able not only to listen to the counter argument, but distinguish them. What does distinguish mean? Means you consider that authority that they put out, because if a person is competent, they have actually very good facts. They do. But what you want is you want to dismiss that fact, and or that fact doesn't matter for this particular case. Remember that argument when I was talking about the Japan incident or the second wave in Japan of reopening the economy. First of all, those who argue that doesn't realize that there was no national lockdown in Japan. Wasn't. There was a regional one based on the mayors of the city, so they closed down up to the mayor, right? But there was no national lockdown. Okay, already there's a difference. You have a national lockdown in Malaysia, non-national lockdown in Japan. Japan was determined to actually carry out the Olympics, if you realize that. So the government was very keen on that, the Olympics. And they were postulating that argument in situations that is not that serious, and we shouldn't be too troubled by it. And again, if you want to distinguish that argument, you will say that, well, the rate rise up a few days and then it went back to the normal rates again. All right, I'm not quite sure how the Japanese government is handling it now, but to the best of my knowledge, the numbers have not, continuously risen. So that's the good thing, okay? And there are some people who make the argument, if we open too soon, we'll be like America. Now, I understand if you are pro, you're not pro opening. I understand that. I know that you're coming from a good place. You want to protect people. You want to protect your loved ones. I understand that. However, if you're using this argument, you also have to realize that in America, the rates have not been reduced yet. It's rising constantly. And it's not technically a second wave. It's technically the first wave. All right? And also, there is no 2-to-1 recovery rates, or there is no flattening of the curve, and there's no flattening of the curve. Meaning the rates have continuously rise, though they sometimes try to flatten, but it's immediately rising again, right? So that's the problem. When you're using these arguments, you try to distinguish them. And they're correct when they say that, reopening too soon is bad. Yes, it is. But in situations of Malaysia reopening now, when rates of recovery is 2 times, and meaning that 2 people recover for each 1 person infected, and the infection rate is lower than 1 person per infected person, you are in a good situation. All right? So that's why reopening is better in a sense. Okay. Again, if you disagree with me, that you are absolutely entitled to your opinions. So I'm just using that as an example. Okay. So I'm trying to distinguish it from the current fact, because you might have that evidence in your mind. Okay, so you have the 5th one. What is the outcome of your arguments and your proposition? Okay, after you discuss everything here, you have to have a conclusion, yes? Right? If you have an essay, people tend to forget that even arguments in real life, you do need a conclusion to your argument. So, for example, if I reopen the economy, what will happen? Well, we start losing billions of dollars per day. People will still keep their jobs. Small business will remain ongoing, and that means not a lot of people lose their jobs, so they can maintain. However, what happens if your opponents gets what they want? So you can say that yes, the infection rate is reduced, true, but it's not necessary, as the infection rate are already at a low. Okay, and if you continue to close down, thousands and thousands and thousands of people, maybe even millions of people, would lose their jobs as startup companies and SME have no income, and the government can't bail you out forever because we are not a rich country, right? We don't have billions and billions of dollars on the hand, right? So in that situation, to present an argument one way or the other. For example, let's say if you're talking about a movie, okay, a movie is a bit more difficult, okay, because what is your end game in the movie, right? So let's say you say that your other person is saying, what if Return of the Jedi is the best movie? Okay, then you say that what about all these things that happen in Empire Strikes Back? Like, okay, if you haven't watched that movie, I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil you, but that movie is over 30 years old. Why haven't you watched it? All right. So what happened in that situation? There was a plot twist where Darth Vader is the father of Luke Skywalker. In the Return of the Jedi, we don't see that. Although some people like it because of the earlier scene. Anyway, all right. Anyhow, continuing on, let's talk about tactics and tricks. Okay, continue, because some people really like this part. Most of the time, people actually discuss this one. They only want to know about the tactics and tricks. All right, so I'm going to show you an example of Mr. Jordan Peterson and Miss Katie. Okay, Miss Katie Newman is a very intelligent speaker. Most of the time, she is actually a very good interviewer. But I don't know, for whatever reason, she has decided to focus on Peterson at this time. And unfortunately, she did something that was unnatural. You shouldn't do if you're a journalist, which is strawman. All right. Now, in that conversation, you realize that she uses the word, so you're saying, so you are saying, so you are saying, a lot. All right. And then she gave a caricature of that argument. All right. It's not the argument here she presented, but she's trying to change it. Right. He says that we humans evolved from lobsters, and we have, like normal genetics. There's some things that a lobster has that humans also have because we evolved from them for one point of life. And then she said, you want humanity to follow the example of lobsters then? You want the people to organize like lobsters, okay? Peterson said, no, that's not what I'm saying, right? And here's another example. Okay, this is not actually from the interview, but this is just an example as an example, right? Women want powerful and competent men, right? And Kathy Newman misinterprets this because she's strawmanning. So what you're saying is women are incompetent. Is that what you're saying? She says. Okay, no, obviously that's not what he's saying, right? So what Peterson is saying here is like, well, women don't want to date a loser. Isn't that the truth? So you want to date a loser? What are you talking about? All right. So it doesn't mean if you don't want to date a loser that you are a loser. Doesn't make sense. All right. If you don't want to date a poor person, doesn't mean you're poor. Doesn't work that way. All right. That argument makes no sense. So this is what I mean by straw manning. Straw manning is just a correction of that argument. Right. So this is one of the tricks. So please don't use this. First of all, if you're doing this to your friend, you're a terrible and lousy friend. Don't do it. All right. So do not try to use. So you're saying, oh, also, what do you mean is, okay, there's another way for people to use this. What do you mean is, and then you put a negative spin on their discussion. Okay. Okay, these are other common fallacies. There are so many fallacies out there. Many of them. Right? But I'm going to use only the three most common. You already know about straw man. But let's talk about ad hominem. Okay. Ad hominem is what politicians like to use a lot. They like to use a lot. So what ad hominem is when you, instead of arguing the argument, they attack the person. All right. So something like, okay, this situation is, this bill isn't good enough because it leads to corruption. You should be doing this because it makes corruption easier. And then the response from the other side is like, your side is corrupted. Your side was corrupted too. At one point, your side also stole a lot of money. Blah blah blah. Ad hominem. Okay. Another one is that I also realize parents like to do this. Sorry, parents. Okay. Parents tend to do this to their children. I see this quite often. I don't know why. All right. It's when the children is winning an argument and the parent, like for example, maybe the children is winning an argument about how to better manage a country, like maybe we shouldn't have too many, pengarah or stuff like that. And the parent is like, oh, you know how to run a country, is it? Your room is a mess. Right? How are you giving advice to people? No? Your room is a mess. So how can you be talking about this? You yourself also not orderly, ma? All right. So this is ad hominem because you're attacking that person's character. Okay. I apologize. I once actually used this against a very good friend of mine, and she immediately pulled me back. Right. We were talking about reopening the economy, and I actually she was making an argument about health and stuff, and she is unfortunately a smoker. And I attacked her smoking, right, which I'm not proud of. And this is how you also counter this. She did a great job countering me. I immediately apologized when I realized what I was doing. Okay, so she smokes, right? And you're okay if you smoke, it's up to you. I mean, your own choice. And I attacked her and I said, "Oh, you talking about health? Really? You, the person who smokes?" And she's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! Careful now. You are trying something else, all right? What are you talking about? I'm talking about, one is my own choice. Okay, for example, like smoking is your own choice, right? I don't think anyone forces you to smoke. So, and in a situation, it's my own choice. It's not like I puff to people's face willingly, all right? I do it accidentally, yes, but I don't do it like willingly. I don't go out and infect people with cancer every time I puff or smoke, right? And she's correct. Her argument is very correct, and I realized that, and I apologize. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I got too engaged in that debate I'm having with you, and I apologize. All right, and it's okay to apologize when you're wrong, especially to your friend. All right, and straw manning, all right. Let's talk about the slippery slope argument. I love this argument, and I sometimes employ it. I'm sorry, I do sometimes. All right, this is when someone claims if you do something, it will lead to something else. For example, legalizing marijuana. All right, people often make the argument that if you legalize marijuana, then it will lead to more consumption of it. More people will be addicted, and that will not be good. However, for those who make that argument, please check the marijuana use of Canada and also California, and please tell me if you are correct according to the statistic. All right, because this slippery slope argument is like, oh, if you to approve this one, you approve something else. You will lead to something else, all right? Or it will lead to more drugs being legalized, things like that. Okay. Now, again, if you're for or against it, it's up to you. I know that you perhaps have your reasons for doing so. Okay, but again, you don't want this slope argument. And the best way to actually realize this is actually to use statistics. Believe it or not, this is when you actually say that no, your argument doesn't make sense, so you try to distinguish it. Okay? So that's how you counter this argument, and you don't, sometimes it's quite hard to counter an argument because it seems as if it's true. All right, it seems it is true. That's the problem with slippery slope arguments. Is that okay? If I give a beggar 10 ringgit, he's going to keep asking me for money. All right, so something like that. So that's the problem with slippery slope arguments. However, sometimes, especially welfare systems, right, they often actually lead to people being bad. All right, so there'll be lesser once you're able to remove people from being terrified that they're hungry. They oftentimes would actually be able to pursue other things like looking for a job. Because if they're hungry and they're homeless, they don't have time to look for a job. Sorry, because they're actually trying to survive from dying. Right. So if you give them money, you probably will help them anyway. Or not. It's up to you again. All right. This is one of my favorite ones. Not my favorite to use. It's just one of my favorite ones when people use it. Okay, this is what I call confuse the argument, confuse the speaker. Okay, confuse them with fancy words, fancy, beautiful, crafted words, fancy words. All right. If I fabricate my intelligence, it'll be great. All right. So sometimes I don't use big words. I don't fully understand in an effort to make myself sound more photosynthesis. All right. So we'll fire up. Great. So in this situation, is then when they use big words that they don't understand, or they're using big words to try to make it seem as if they understand what they're talking about. All right. I once had a conversation with a friend of mine where this friend said to me, this is the penultimate matter. This is the penultimate matter, he said to me a few times. And I said, you mean this is the second most important thing? Is that what you mean? Because that's what it means, penultimate. Okay. And he said, no. Penultimate is the most important thing. I'm sorry, man. Ultimate is the most important thing. Penultimate is the thing before the important thing or the last thing. Right? So so it sounds fancy, the word penultimate, but again, he's using the wrong method. So I was waiting like, when is the most important thing then? And I said, no, it's is the important thing. I said, no, that's not the So again, here's the thing, okay? So when people use fancy words, what you want to do is ask them to clarify it or simplify it for you. Okay, most people don't do this because they don't want to look like an idiot, right? Oh, this guy's using fancy words. I don't want to see this if I don't understand these fancy words, all right? But that actually makes you a disservice, because if you don't understand the argument, how are you supposed to counter it? All right? How are you supposed to counter an argument you don't understand? Okay, so so please don't get confused by fancy words. People tend to do this a lot. You know, they try to, when they're losing an argument, start using like fancy words. I don't like it. I find it the weakest of the tricks. It's so easy to dismiss, you know. So don't do that. All right. Okay. So coming to our last matter here. So plant seeds. What does this mean? Is this webinar becoming eco-friendly? All right. Is that what's happening here? Mr. Samuel, what are you doing? Are you talking about green earth? No, that's not what I'm talking about. All right. I want to tell you that convincing takes time. It does. All right. Convincing takes time. You cannot win. Okay. If your friend is not convinced the first time you talk to them, it doesn't mean that it's over. Especially if they're your friend, right? They're having lunch with you all the time anyway. Right? What you need to realize that you need to plant seeds in there, or seeds of doubt inside the brain. All right. And like all seeds, sometimes they sprout because of rain and stuff like that. Right? The same thing with your arguments. Okay, I'm going to show you an example of Mr. Daryl Davis. So Mr. Daryl Davis here, he converted 300 KKK members, and he's a black man. Okay, KKK members are white supremacists, by the way. So he was able to convert 300 white racist supremacists, right, himself. And if you listen to his podcast with Joe Rogan, you realize that he says, well, it didn't take me one day. It actually took me like 3 years, 4 years, or even 6 years. All right. And you say, I don't have time to convince someone that Star Wars is a great movie in 6 years. Maybe you should. All right. So if you care so much what's the greatest movie and spend 6 years trying to tell them about it. All right. But if you are something important like trying to convert a racist, that's very important. Right. So Mr. Daryl Davis was able to convince the Imperial Wizard of the KKK. I don't know why he's called the Imperial Wizard. Maybe he's a magician. Who knows? All right. But anyhow, fancy names and stuff. So the Imperial Wizard is sort of like a very high-ranking KKK member. All right. So it's not like you convince the Pope to stop being Roman Catholic or something like that, right? So his convincing of this person was incredible. And I'm at awe how he was able to do this. He was able to change 300 KKK members, racist their whole lives, while being a black man. You believe that? And the way he does it is because he talks about music. And while he's talking about music, he also befriends them, and they have a good conversation here and there, right? And eventually they realize, like, look, it's impossible that a black man is inferior to a white man because I like this guy a lot. So he was able to change their mind. They were able to change their mind. And that only took like 3 or 6 years. You have to understand, when I was younger, I was a very liberal. I'm still liberal. It's just that I'm very liberal when I was younger. You wouldn't like me. All right? Probably you don't like me now, so I don't know. That's up to you. Right? So when I was younger, I was a sort of a Marxist. Yeah? I was sort of a Marxist, and I believed that Marxism was the way. All right, I was reading Karl Marx, the Communist Manifesto, and all the other books that he wrote, like Das Kapital, and I was a bit convinced that this is the way. I had a conversation with a very intelligent old man. I won't say his name, but he presented a good argument in which he said that Marx's argument is only possible if humans were perfect. Right? For example, if I won't discuss it because if I talk about Marx, you will have another hour of me discussing about it, which I don't want to do. Okay? Maybe the next webinar. So next webinar, prepare yourself. We'll prepare that one. All right. So anyhow, we're talking about Karl Marx, and he was able to convince me my idea was wrong. Obviously, I didn't say yes and agree to him that time, right? As I realized that there was a flaw in my argument, and I thought, oh, this guy don't want to be convinced, It's just not one to listen. It's just an old man stuck with his ideas, But as I grow older, I realize what he's saying is true. people are greedy. Also, want better things for ourselves, and even if it's at the expense of other people, which is unfortunate, right? But it's the truth. Humans are not perfect. If you give us a perfect world, the first thing we'll do is break it, right? That's human nature. That's so basically, that's yeah. Okay. Okay, that's basically our discussion here today. I hope I didn't bore you to death. If you were bored to death, then please tell me that you bored me to death. Okay, that situation, we will have an argument whenever I bore you to death or not. That would be great. All right, so the other argument is no simple task. Okay, theoretically it seems simple. Just like when you watch gymnastics, right? Very easy. Oh, I can follow this one. It's easy, yeah? Can just go on and do this. But actually it's not. People must not just walk away from this webinar 100% an expert in arguments. You're not going to do that. You don't walk away from this webinar and now you can argue with everyone. Don't go to the makcik next door and start arguing with her. Please, don't do this, right? I'm not telling you to do that, okay? But you have to realize that this is just knowledge. You need to practice it. It's like when you're walking, right? It seems hard in the first place. Okay, walking seems easy now because you've been doing it so many times. Right, but at the start of your birth or whatever, all right, whatever. What else other than your birth? All right, man. All right, so walking was difficult, and eventually you mastered it because you tried it several times, and now it seems easy. Walking is not even hard. You can do it in your sleep. Some people sleepwalk, believe it or not. Right, so you're able to do that. So basically speaking, so easy for you now. And the same thing with arguments. You need to have like 100 arguments before you are well versed in it, and you need to keep this in your mind. Believe me, that's going to take time before you actually be able to argue well. All right, so I don't want to keep you here. This is a Saturday. You need to go out and have fun. All right, I heard the cinemas are open, so watch a movie. I watch a movie later on. So let's see. All right, so that's all for me today. So I'm gonna tell Wallace to appear and show his beautiful face again. Because we are now at the end of our discussion.
Wow, very interesting topic you have there, Mr. Samuel. I'm sure our audience will learn a lot from you. So we are almost at the end of our session, and now is the Q&A session. So if you all have any question, please ask Mr. Samuel. You can post your question in the comment section. I think we have one question from Mr. Hillary. Said, good evening, Mr. Samuel. How can we face a person who keep insisting points of view and saying that his or her points are better than the other?
All right, so basically you're saying here, Ms. Hillary, you're saying that this person keep on. So in a very simplified way, you're trying to tell me that this person always thinks they're right. Right? Isn't that what you're trying to say? So should you immediately counter argue them? First of all, I need to ask you an odd question. Do you actually want to talk to this person? Because you talk to people who think they're right all the time. All right? Because no way to convince them. But if they are really the argument, what you want to do is that you want to let them. Sometimes you let someone hang themselves, basically speaking, by their arguments, right? So you listen to the arguments and then you try to dissect it. So what about this? Okay, the way you can actually do this, especially if you don't want to offend that person, what about this? What about this situation? How does your argument work in this way? Right? So you try to dissect them. You try to help them reach a point of view. Okay. So for example, that person is like, who's the best movie ever, right? Okay, Fast to Furious, the best movie ever made. Crazy, the fast cars. And you said, no. However, that he's never won an Oscar. And they're like, no. It's not a boring, it's a great movie. Situation like that. And you're saying that what about this movie? It had this storyline and people did enjoy that. Did you not enjoy that movie? That movie was great. Right? So you want to ask them questions and you try to see if you can push them in a certain manner. Right? Because it seems like you're talking about someone that's really dug into their heels, right? Which is basically that they're not willing to listen to you at all. It doesn't matter what they're saying or what you're saying. So you need to let them have rope to hang themselves, maybe, but also maybe you try to nudge them in a way where the arguments can be dismissed. Sometimes, okay, here's the thing, guys. When you are trying to win an argument or trying to persuade someone, persuading and winning arguments could be actually different. What I mean by this one is that you cannot actually persuade someone, they need to persuade themselves. Right? So they need to actually persuade themselves that they are, that they are wrong or they are incorrect. So that would be my comment to you. But first, you need to identify, do you actually want to talk to this person? Right? You don't want to talk to someone who thinks they're right all the time, and you try to say, hey, look, if they're your friend, you need to tell them, look, I don't really appreciate you thinking that you are right all the time. Maybe a good way to have a conversation. Then probably they would argue with you because they're really deep into their thing. I try my, sometimes, you just try to avoid having confrontations and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Hillary, for your question. Next question is from Mr. Rudy. He asks, how to maintain cool when arguing with someone? How to maintain your cool? Over to you.
You want me to answer this seriously or in a joking manner? Just pour ice on yourself. Then you stay cool. I'm just kidding. All right, I'm just kidding. How do you keep cool in a person? Okay, the best way to keep cool is actually to adapt a body posture in which you say, all right, okay, calm down. Take deep breath, but don't take very deep breath because then it sounds like you're having a heart attack. All right, so just take deep breaths. Start counting to 3. 1, 2. All right. So you try to keep the cool. Basically, what you don't want is your heart rate to go up. Right? If it goes up and then you are speaking in a very loud voice, right? That's basically not the way you want it, right? The best way to actually do this, maybe if the person is making a bit annoyed, maybe try to slow down your voice. All right. Look, I understand what you're trying to say, but you don't really need to shout. Because actually there's a counter to the loud voice thing. It's actually a lower voice, surprisingly so, right? But a good example of this is a Joe Rogan episode with that guy from Space. I don't remember his name, but he is a very intelligent person talking about space. And what happened is that he was saying something like, I don't care about what the annex burial grounds or whatever. Eventually we can discuss it in a logical manner. And he says, I don't care. And Joe was like, no. Look, don't care. They do care about the burial grounds. And you need to understand that your opinions are not the only opinions people, even if you are a genius, right, that people consider. So you want to maintain your cool up, again, count to 3, take a deep breath, right? Deep breath, and I mean deep breath. Take a deep breath and start counting to 3. That's normally what I do. And sometimes I tap myself on the hand, something like this, right? Just telling myself, "Look, calm down, man." All right? It doesn't matter if you win this argument, you don't win this argument, doesn't matter, right? You just need to calm down and then present your argument in a weird manner. Another thing I want to tell you guys about, I didn't actually talk about this. What happens if you get interrupted? Okay, when you get interrupted, is that you say, "Oh, sorry about that." Okay, you continue, and then the person will interrupt, right? And then you say, "All right, thanks, man. Do you mind if I continue my story?" Because then you're actually asking a permission for that person to continue your line of arguments, and then that person's like, oh, "Okay, yeah." Normally, if they're polite person, if they're not polite person, you ask, like, "Do you mind I continue arguing?" "No, you go home." Right? Then you don't want to befriend that person and just get away from that person. Right? So that's basically the way that you.
Thank you very much. And we have another question from DB. DB asks, can we argue to neither win nor lose the arguments? Over to you.
Yes, absolutely. That's what Karl Popper said. The idea of an argument is not victory, but to progress. So when you're having a conversation, so for example, if you're having a conversation with your spouse, right, your husband or wife, the worst thing you can do is win that argument. Because then you are now married to a loser. And eventually they will avenge their own loss somehow, right? You don't know when, but they will, right? So what you want to do is you want to push for progress. For example, okay, she's telling you that, wash the dishes. So what she's telling you is not like she washed dishes. That's not what she's telling you. Look, I'm dealing with the kid, right? I'm dealing with the kid. I have so much to do. I'm cleaning clothes. I'm tired. I don't have time for myself, right? Can you at least do this one thing for me? If you so kind to at least wash the dishes, because then I will have more time for myself. I watch the television show I like. There's nothing wrong with watching a television show. Crying out loud, please do, right? And you want to reach a progress, and you want that conversation to start, and you're saying like, okay, I will wash the dishes. However, can you at least say it in a nice manner? That would be great, right? But don't do it at the time if you're arguing with your spouse, right? Don't do it at that time because they're emotionally charged on that. But yes, you can. The statement is that you may want to change the statement, an argument, to a discussion, right? Maybe you can discuss something, which is great. If your mentality is, I want to discuss this, for example, a great movie or whatever, then that would be the better method to seeing it. Don't need to win. Okay? Be honest with your friends with that person and your family members and stuff like that. To win an argument is perhaps not something you want to do, you know, because they will try to avenge that loss. You want that. Right?
Thank you. Thank you, DB, for your question. Next, we have Juk Kai Chong. Juk Kai Chong asks, what is the difference? What is the differences between objective and subjective views? Do they affect structure of arguments?
Okay. What is objective? For example, is the sky blue? That's an objective one. Everyone agrees the sky is blue. If you don't agree the sky is blue, well, I have news for you. The sky is blue. All right, that's what I mean by objective, right? Objective standard means it's based on most people. Based on most people, if you're saying about an objective view, meaning that it is based on most people, or what is believed to be agreed by most people. Subjective view is like your love for music. Okay, maybe you love BTS. Maybe you love Blackpink. I listen to Blackpink. Believe it or not, me, I do listen to Blackpink. I'm sorry, but sometimes the music is good. I'm sorry about that. You can make fun of me, great, you know. But I do enjoy, listen to Blackpink songs. I'm not ashamed of it, right? But some people say that, Blackpink isn't a good song, or K-pop songs are not good. And that's subjective because it's up to your own taste. Subjective meaning to that person themselves. And how does it affect the structure of an argument? Yes, it does, because it depends on what you're trying to argue. For example, if you're trying to argue something like, what is the best movie, or what is the best music, or who's the best band, or which is the best, thing, then you will be talking about someone's preference. And to be honest, there is no real way to actually win that argument because it's based on someone's preference, right? But you can try to convince them of your preference is better than perhaps their preference. Because maybe they haven't watched a lot of movies, right? Something like that that you want. So an objective view, however, would be like, okay, here's an objective view. All right, here's an objective view. For example, what is the best way to stop a virus? What's the best way to stop a virus? Now, there are many views, but obviously the best way to stop a virus is actually to use vaccines or a cure, right? Seems objective. Most people would agree with it. Some people are anti-vaxxers, okay, fair enough. But most of the time, people would agree objectively this is the best method. All right. However, subjectively, it's like this. Yes, vaccines and cures are great. However, some people have a weakness to vaccines. Right? For example, the genetics are different. So that would be subjective to that person. Okay, only to that one person, not to the general public. So often objective views, when it's when you try to implement something to everyone, that means objective. So you're trying to implement it to everyone. Like, for example, GST, right? And subjective is when you're trying to convince someone of something that maybe is preferred. Is not, you're not trying to implement it on everyone. You're just trying to convince that one person, right? That maybe you're saying the Blackpink is actually a good song. Please listen to. Okay, sometimes it's actually a good song. I'm sorry. All right, I do listen to Blackpink. I do watch Blackpink. Sorry, man. I'm sorry. I know people are going to make jokes of that in the next day. Why do? I like it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Samuel. Next we have Ronaldo. Ronaldo asks, At what point should we not entertain an argument anymore? When our opponent, conversing partner, anchors on their views, or basically how to exit from the argument. Over to you, Samuel.
So when do you exit from the argument? I would say it's when the argument becomes in bad faith. What does it mean when it comes in bad faith? Is when someone is attacking your character instead of your argument. All right. If you correct them and they like, for example, like my friend is now, she corrected me, right, and I accepted it. But if they are not willing to give you any quarter, or then they okay. Here's the thing. Sometimes people believe the best way to win an argument is just to talk endlessly. All right, to talk endlessly because they have a very, very deep oxygen tank, so they immediately just try to talk you out of it as long as they can without you saying anything. All right, that's where you know that argument is not worth your time. If that person doesn't even allow you to talk, they're not trying to argue with you, they're trying to preach to you. That's a completely different thing. If they're trying to preach, please get out of there. All right, because there's no way to actually stop someone from preaching. So you need to differentiate whenever that person is preaching or they are arguing or discussing with you. Because if they are arguing or discussing with you, they will actually give you time to actually present your arguments as well. So how to exit from the argument? I'm sorry, man. I don't want to talk about this anymore. You're not listening to me. I'm sorry, man. But I need to get out of this. All right. So you say, I'm sorry, I have something else to do. It's obvious you don't care about my opinions. I'm sorry. So, I mean, if you're kind-hearted, you just apologize. In some cases, I'm like, okay, I just get out of there. I just stand up and I'm like, okay, you don't want to listen to what I want to say. There's no point in us discussing this anymore. Again, it's not a debate. It's not.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we have enough time for another 2 more questions. Another one from Trazenda. Okay, she asks, how to control ourselves from saying
okay.
Especially in a heated argument.
I often have this problem when I was younger. I often say, yeah, things like that. What happens is that I try to get comfortable with my talking. You need to practice. Actually, this is not a problem with arguments. This is a problem with public speaking. You need to realize that you're a valuable person, that your opinions matter, and your opinions are worthwhile listening to. So what you need to start to do is that you say, I'm sorry. Okay, or you can even warn that person ahead of time. Say, look, I sometimes sorry about that. But I just want to I want to present my case forward. I hope you listen to it. So you apologize. I'm sorry. But this is more of a confidence issue more than it's actually an argument issue. Most of the time, when you are not natural to public speaking, it gets in your way. Now, pauses. Pauses are fine. Because what they are trying to tell you is that, look, my brain needs to process this information first. Let me process it. Then I will continue with the discussion. That's why you have the and the ooh. Right? Most of the time, it's your brain trying to process the situation. Or, in other words, you might not be so confident in your public speaking situation. You're trying to present it in a language. For example, if it's not your natural language, right? Okay, I realize something. When I'm speaking in Malay, my is much more regular. All right, because I'm not masterful with the language, so my confidence level with it is not great. So that's basically I would have to say. But you need to practice that one. I know people say, look, practice with the mirror. Now I would say practice by taking a video of yourself, because then you can actually watch yourself, and you're like, learn this. So that's what I would say.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think this is a very common problem with everyone. Okay, we will have.
Sorry, Wallace. I just want to say something. If you're a very anxious person, sorry to interrupt you there, Wallace.
No problem. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. What you want to do is perhaps eat something too. For example, chocolate. Because if you're a very anxious person, you're about to enter into an argument, it's actually very helpful for you to eat. Because that tells your mind that this is no problem, man. I'm eating. That's how relaxed I am. I'm eating right now. Right, so that's something you want to also consider. But don't eat every time you're stressed. Then you become big like me. So you don't really want that either.
Good advice. Thank you. So we have one last question from Noor Izzati. She asks, while arguing on a topic, one party uses a certain term, and both parties ended up arguing on the right definition instead of arguing on the main issue. So how to avoid this? Over to you, Mr. Samuel.
This is very hilarious. I need to ask Mrs. Zaki, are you a legally trained person? Because oftentimes this happens when someone's legally trained. For some certain reason, people start arguing about the definition. What is a movie? Like, I would say that when you're arguing about the definition, then please, okay, what you need to do is you need to take part of their definition and your definition and try to find a middle ground where you can agree on. All right, okay, your definition of a movie is something on film or something like that, or your definition of a book is a physical book or which has writing on it, and then you say, okay, but ebooks are also books. So do you agree that books are at least something in writing? So you try to bridge it, because then if you spend so much time in definition, okay, then it doesn't allow the argument to go forth. Okay, so I find this odd because I only have this problem with legally trained person where they try to argue the definition for so long, right? Or person who is very adept at debating, because definition sometimes is everything, right? So, for example, when you're trying to say what is good or morally good, and people trying to define good as something. So, what you want to do is you want to take something that's yours and his or hers, and you try to bridge it somehow. All right. How do you do this? I can't give you a magic bullet answer because I'm not arguing with the same person, right? But you need to find something that's yours and theirs, and you try to bridge it together. For example, if their argument is football, so what is football? Is it someone with 11 players or someone with 6 players? Is it something on the field or something that's like futsal, right? Which one is it, right? So you say, okay, you agree that football is someone kicking a ball. You try to find a common ground first, and you try to bridge it, and then you continue with that conversation. So that's how you try to do it. It's not so simple. And I kind of agree with her definition. It's a very complex answer, very good question. And I probably would need to think about this for 3 years. So I'll probably need to tell you a good answer on this in 3 years now. Of course, I'm joking, but it will take me a bit of time to actually present that argument. Right? What happens if we actually get defined? But my best suggestion on the inside is try to find a bridge. Try to find a bridge together. Not an easy one. That person don't want to do a bridge. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel. We are very happy to have you having this webinar. And before we end the session, do you have anything to say to our audience?
Okay, I have only something to say to the audience. So when you are arguing, if you are so focused on trying to win, you will be having an incomplete map, right? So when you are argument, that person has an argument that's against your argument. What you want to do is you need to realize they have another piece of the map. And you may be thinking to yourself, what does it matter? I just want to win. But then you will have an incomplete map. And later on, your definition of something or your argument of something isn't complete. When you accept someone's piece of the map, all right, then you can compare it and you can utilize it in your own knowledge. You can make your arguments more robust in the future. So maybe you need to take a bullet. All right, okay, fair enough. I can see your point. Right? And then you try to formulate your arguments better later on, or you shake it up, basically speaking. Right? You can shake it up in a way that it will allow your arguments to be better suited in the future. So don't focus so much in winning an argument. Try to, okay, maybe perhaps consider it more like a discussion instead of an argument to win, that I would say.
Thank you. So it requires a lot of practice. Yeah. Yes. Thank you again.
Please. Alone. Leave her alone. Right? Okay.
All right. Mr. Samuel, we thank you for today's session. And we hope to see you in the upcoming webinar. All right.
All right. Thank you, Wallace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Wallace. Thank you, SEGiCollege, for giving me the opportunity. And if you do come to SEGi, please do give me a hi or something like that and tell me I watched your webinar. And then start arguing with me, because that will be fantastic. So
thank you. All right. Hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye. Okay, so we have come to the end of today's webinar. So before that, as promised, here is the link, the QR code for the e-certificate form. Inside the form, there is actually a question that you will have to answer, and we will pick the lucky winner. We'll pick the lucky winner and we'll announce the lucky winner on our Facebook. So please like and follow our Facebook page and our Instagram page. Okay, if you don't have a QR code, you can always key in the link as stated there. Okay, so once again, thank you very much for following us through this webinar session. We hope you enjoy your Saturday, and goodbye, everybody. See you in the next webinar session. Bye-bye.